Pharmaphobic is powered by Achieve the Lifestyle, a company dedicated to helping you empower your health, redefine your lifestyle, and all for the health of it. You're listening to Pharmaphobic, where we challenge the state of health in America. I'm Janie, a physician assistant, and I've seen how healthcare keeps people dependent instead of truly healthy.
And I'm Dan, a veteran turned fitness pro here to uncover the truth and explore simple and sustainable health solutions. From big pharma to big food, we're exposing the conflicts of interest keeping us sick and finding better ways to take back our health.
No fluff, no gimmicks, just real talk, real solutions, and a little bit of fun along the way. Hi, and welcome to the Pharmaphobic Podcast. I'm Janie.
And I'm Dan. And today we want to talk about something that is often overlooked when it comes to the whole long-term health and fitness. And we kind of mentioned it in the previous episode. So today we're going to deep dive a little bit into it. We are basically going to talk about connections, social connections, building relationships, and how the relationships that you partake in can really affect your long-term health for better or for worse. What do you think, Jane?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that that's something that's not readily talked about. And in my experience working with patients, that's something that I repeatedly see impacts their health, either directly or indirectly. And an example, it doesn't necessarily have to be, a spouse. It could be a toxic relationship with a friend, or something I've seen a lot in my work is toxic relationships with parents. So older people who their parents then come to live with them, and not necessarily toxic as in it may not be obviously malicious or anything like that, but there may be like resentment of having to care and just things like that. So we were not necessarily going to get into that parent-adult-child relationship, but just paying attention of the relationships in your day-to-day, because that has direct influence on your health.
Yeah, and obviously the goal here with everything that we talk about is to help people create a stronger, healthier, more capable version of themselves. And people hear that and they go immediately to nutrition and training. Of course, that's part of it. But we like to also hone in on other things that are more intangible that play a part in your long-term health. And if you don't think that having a bad relationship with a significant other or with a friend or with a neighbor could mess up your health, I don't know, go talk to somebody who got in an argument and then had a heart attack right afterwards.
Right. Or like we've mentioned before, everything's related. And so if you have a bad interaction with like a neighbor, because I think that's a great example, because that's not necessarily something people think of right off the top of their head. But if you have a bad interaction with a neighbor, that puts you in a poor mood. Now your energy's kind of blah. You don't go work out, or you seek food for comfort, right? And so poor relationships in your life can drive you to making other poor choices.
Yep.
Okay.
And then on the other hand, then we talk about how good, like having really good relationships can positively affect you and boost your mood, hold you accountable to things, help you achieve goals. If you have a good support structure from, friends and family, all these things are, help you achieve professional success, if you will, if you have a really good spousal support at home.
Yeah.
Like all these things, it can go either way. It either builds you or it can detract from you.
Yeah. There's those quotes like, we stand on the shoulders of giants, right?
It takes a village.
Right. It takes a village. And I always mess up that quote. You are the sum of the five people
you
you're
spend
around.
the most time with. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of things around there on the social medias about, if you hang out with a group of smokers, you're going to smoke. If you hang out with, people who eat out all the time, you're going to eat, so it's, you develop or you adopt the habits of those around you. So you have the power to decide, is that going to progress your health forward, or is that going to detract from your health?
And then when you say you're going to make your health a priority, I think that comes with eventually you're going to have to curate your relationships a little bit. Because some people, you know, let's say you have this friend that always wants to go drinking and that's the only way that they want to hang out with you, and you're like kind of leaving that behind,
Oof, yeah.
then that might affect the relationship a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
There's other people that, you know, it's a random Wednesday, they want to go to happy hour, you want to go to the gym, and then you start rifting there. So there's a lot there to kind of talk about a little bit.
Yeah. So I've personally experienced that. I remember when I started peeling back on the drinking, because I used to bartend, and so drinking was part of the job, you know? And then when I stepped away from that, trying to prioritize my health more, and was going to grad school, so getting hammered wasn't really great for studying. But I remember specifically, I had a friend tell me, "You're not fun anymore because you don't drink." And I was like,
That's big.
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's
And so
big.
you will, as you start to prioritize your health and you start to make decisions that make you feel better, you may find that you had some social connections that were more superficial or tied to things that weren't good for you, and that you'll lose those friendships, or they'll change, and that can be challenging.
Man, you're also holding a mirror up. If you start working on yourself hardcore, you're holding a mirror up, and a lot of people might see that as an attack to them, even though you're just focusing on yourself. They might think like, "Oh, I'm seeing this person strive here, you know, shoot for this, work on goals here," and it's making them feel uncomfortable. They'll never verbalize this, but
Right.
they'll start kind of like jabbing at you a little bit, which is what you just described there.
Well, and I also
Essentially.
think, you know, if somebody's not really feeling very great about themselves, and then they start to see somebody else do better, it makes them feel inferior. So then they need to bring them down to make them self-elevated.
That's
And for the example of that person telling me I wasn't fun anymore, and then I think about how I acted when I was intoxicated, I'm like, you want me to be that person? That person was messy and not great. Like, so why are you trying to get me to be that more, you know? So that was a rude awakening in that regard.
You know, it's funny that now I'm thinking like I've been into, and we'll get into this here in a little bit, like our own health journeys, but I've been into health and fitness a long time. But I was like, it's the halfway thing. Like I had one foot in, one foot out, because it's like, hey, from Monday through Friday, I'm going to go hardcore. Boom, my eating's perfect. I'm wild on my workouts. I'm going to get 30 workouts during the week. And then on the weekend, I'm like drunk every freaking Saturday type of thing.
And then why am I not seeing any progress?
I never did that, but it was more like Sundays, you know, my mood dumps and all this other stuff. And it's because you're like going like bam, 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 bam. On Saturday, you're just going hard. And then Sunday, you're like, oh, I'm so, you know,
the
scaries, that sort of thing. And you're, why is this happening to me? And like, it's the drinking. but it's unhealthy behaviors that, you know, just have a cascade effect. You know, before we carry on, I wanted to touch again on like the loneliness epidemic, like that. I don't think people are talking about that enough.
And I want to point out, like, because a lot of people choose to live alone, and you know, you think about the homesteaders. That's not the right word, but the people who live like off the grid. I can't think of the word for them, but they thrive being alone, but they aren't lonely.
Yeah.
Right.
And you could be in the middle of a bustling urban sprawl and have all these neighbors and all these people that you hang out with on Saturdays, and you're like, oh my God, my friend group is so cool, and you still feel lonely.
Right, because it's all these superficial relationships.
Yep. And you're kind of basing these relationships on fleeting pursuits, if you will, whereas you're not actually connecting with people. And I think we hope to like kind of lay that out a little bit here today. So that's why this is timely. You know, they're saying this rising suicide rates tied to people feeling lonely, and we're supposedly more connected than ever. Like you could build a relationship with somebody on the other side of the world now and talk back and forth and communicate instantly with all the stuff that we have. And you can see their face on Zoom and blah, 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 blah. And you can see the highlights of their life on Instagram, but we are not actually connecting.
Right. So I think a great example, I'm living that real time. So I was working remotely 100%, and I would connect with people over Teams messaging, video, I would see client patients over, video. But now I'm back to working in an office part-time, and I'm physically in the room with coworkers and patients, and there's a marked difference. It's much more fulfilling being physically in person. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a deep and meaningful relationship with people. Like, your friends aren't in person,
Yeah.
you guys, but you feel a difference when you guys get together physically
No
than
doubt.
over video.
So for reference here, like my closest friends that I've been friends with a long time, I'm going to be 42 years old this year. One of them I've known since kindergarten. So you're talking about 35, 36 years of
Right.
friendship at that point. Consistent friendship. And then my other friends, we're talking about 25 plus years of friendship because we met in high school and we went to college together. And then we've been friends ever since. Like, one's in Tampa, we're in South Florida. The other one's in Arizona. The other one's in Jacksonville in North Florida. So our connections are mostly phone calls and video messaging and that sort of thing. But I think what's worth mention there is that when we actually built this bond,
It was in
it was in
person.
person. And it was, cell phones weren't a thing. Oh my God, I'm that old. Woo! You used to pay for, we weren't texting and there was no social media and that sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
Facebook, it was MySpace, and we were in college already. So we'd been bonded for a while. And there's something to be said, with that throwback way of building a friendship. Like, there's probably a lot more value in it now in this world where we're so distracted, but we supposedly are more connected than ever.
Right. Or this is a big thing I've noticed. Like, you're friends with somebody on Instagram, just through like groups or whatever, and then you see them in person, and you don't even interact with them in person.
Yeah.
Even as awkward as it is, because I am the queen of making things awkward, I will go up to them and be like, we're friends on Instagram, and I refuse to not be friends with you in person. So, like, hi, like, let's meet in real life.
I got to give a shout out to like the power athlete guys here on this, because that community is so, it's good.
Yeah.
Where I'm friends with these people on Instagram, and then, we go to Summer Strong or something, and I meet them at face-to-face for the first time, and it's like, damn, bro, what's up? It's like, let's hang out, let's do, let's work out, let's do this thing. It's like you're real friends. So I'm not gonna like poo-poo on social media and these remote connections a lot, but I gotta tell you,
rely on it solely.
don't solely rely on it. And I think that speaks more to what we connected over. Mm-hmm. And it speaks more to the individuals that are attracted to that network versus, social media brought us together. Right. No, it's more like these people are of a certain character and they're seeking a certain thing, and they're all attracted to this community. So it lends itself to when you meet in person, it's like you're friends already. Does that make sense? And I say that's more rare. You get more of what you described, where you're like, you're friends on social media, and then you see each other in person and you act like you haven't connected.
Yeah. Got that a lot with like the, when I was still in the CrossFit community. Mm-hmm. Like, you go to the gym reposts something of you, everyone starts to like friend you or whatever, but then you see them at the gym like a few days later, like during a workout, and you're like, hey, and you're like, but.
And I don't think that's I don't think that's people being a bad person. I really think it speaks to we've lost our ability to connect with people and to like be friends and make friends.
Yeah. And I don't have a graceful way of breaking that. So I just kind of Kool-Aid man through it. And I'm like, hi,
You just bust in, kick it in. We're about to be friends. Yeah. Be my friend. Like, for real friend. Just Debo them into be for real friend, not the social media stuff.
Yeah. And I think, we're going to talk about this towards the end of the episode, but I think a huge thing that impacted us all with social connectivity and social interactions was the virus that shall not be named. Ooh. Just really kind of like, I could even appreciate some social awkwardness the first time I went out, because we were living in upstate New York and we were very restricted on where we could go, how we could interact with people. And so then when it was free reign, I was like, this feels weird.
Yeah, it did. And even as somebody who wasn't but I'm going to choose my words wisely here, who wasn't completely bought in to the
Yes.
approach, I was still affected by that.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine if you're on the other side of that equation and you were completely bought into the approach, how you were affected by it. But here's where I think we need to like look at ourselves in the mirror collectively and really start pointing and digging and getting curious about what the hell's going on when we are experiencing higher levels of obesity because of the situation that shall not be named. We are experiencing higher levels of depression and anxiety because of the situation that shall not be named. We are experiencing developmental issues in children because of the situation that shall not be named. We are experiencing higher rates of suicide and alcoholism. Then we directly tie that to a moment in time where we killed our social connections. We killed them. We literally put the whoosh on it,
Yeah.
and we made them all fake and interactive, like, oh, I see you through the screen and all this stuff. It goes to show how powerful having the right people around you and actually taking time to foster relationships is, and how detrimental it is when you don't put time and effort into this.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that speaks to the importance of actually taking the time to like build the quote unquote ride or die type of relationships and going for that really quantity over quality over quantity.
Wow.
I got that all messed up. Going quality over quantity when it comes to friends and really the relationships that you want to have for the long term, and really investing into people long term. Like, hey, this is somebody I know versus, hey, this is a person that I can rely on, that I can blindly trust. And we're going to, I'm going to put the energy and effort into having an open-ended friendship where hopefully one day we're 85 and we're laughing about some shit that we did when we were 30,
Right.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing that people.
I feel like you guys already act like that.
What do you mean?
You guys act like you're 85.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. But we joke about things like that. Be like, hey, bro, we're going to put you in the old people home because you're going to get old first.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a value in that. Like, there's a peace of mind that comes when you know that there's a group of people that you can trust, and whether that be family and friends or a significant other, that you can like, hey, this is solid built relationship. It's been put to the test and we've endured through the years. That there's a peace of mind and a stress relief that is created where it not only gives you freedom to like pursue other things in life because you're not distracted by that sense of like you're missing something, but these people also can hold you accountable when you're not being, be like, hey, I know you and I know you can do better here. Why are you not doing better? And there's a trust there where they can like really tell you like you should be doing this or that better. Like, hey, bro, you're not looking too healthy right now, or hey, maybe you're drinking a little bit too much. What's up?
Yeah.
Like, and there's when they say that, it bears weight, and you want that. You want to People are running away from accountability these days, it seems. Like holding somebody accountable is considered an attack, and it's considered a oh, look at this person, like calling me out on something. Whereas we should probably be leaning more into that, especially when it comes to the pursuit of health. We should probably be leaning more into accountability and having a group of ride or die people that you can trust and take constructive criticism for, and people that love you and care about you enough to give you constructive criticism is very important.
Yeah. It goes back to that nice versus kind. You don't want people to only be nice to you and just say, yeah, that's fine. You do you, keep going. You want people to be kind. Being kind is saying, hey, I think that you're doing this to the detriment of your health, or you could be doing this better. So the same thing, holding you accountable. And so sometimes kindness isn't necessarily nice, but you care so much about the person that you're willing to maybe upset them a little bit to shake them out of their patterns so that they don't spiral down in any way.
I mean, and obviously there's a requirement for emotional intelligence here and emotional maturity to be able to present a tough topic to somebody you care about like you care about them.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, yo, you're messing up, bro, blah, 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 this is stupid, and just dumping it on their lap, be like, hey, man, this is why, blah, 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 like framing it in a way where the person can receive the message. And even though it might sting, they might be more inclined to doing something about it. That's the nature of this, back and forth relationship when you have that ride or die type of trust in people. That goes to, like couples, relationships. Obviously, people when we talk about relationships, people's first thought is significant others, whether because we're all either in a relationship with a significant other or we're looking for it, even though you might claim you're not looking for a relationship, depending on where you're at in time. It's in your nature to kind of seek out a romantic relationship, right? So that's the first thought where people are like, oh, my significant other that I have or don't have or that I'm looking for, and how that can really give, health or take it away. Like something that makes me scratch my mind with it is couples who diverge in health pursuits. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this, and this might be controversial. I think health and wellness, I'm going to have to put it in the top 3 reasons why people could bring strain into the relationship, things that could strain the relationship, right?
So like if one person is like getting after it at the gym, making health a priority, cooking more food at home, and the other one sits on the couch all the time, orders takeout.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's I'm gonna have to put it up there with finances.
Or you could even say like somebody who's going to therapy, working on their mental health, and the other person who refuses to acknowledge. Yeah.
Yes, these things are top 3 reasons why you could bring strain to a relationship. Finances is an obvious one, and then infidelity is an obvious one.
Well, even the finances is still a divergence because like somebody's like, busting their butt, making the income, and the other person's like
spending the money
or not really doing anything. Now, I know some relationships there is a primary person bringing in money, but the other person like is caring for the children or something like that. So that's different. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, think of it this way with finances. You're making money and trying to save money and invest money. The other person's going on shopping sprees every weekend.
Right.
So,
or they're just not making any effort to contribute.
Yeah.
In some way.
In some way, whether you're taking care of the household, whatever it may be, to contribute in some way. You're just figuring out ways to spend the money that the relationship is bringing in. That's a problem, right? Finances are one of the top reasons for divorce or separations or breaking up of couples. The other one obviously is infidelity. Those 2 are pretty obvious. But the third one, for me, on my opinion, is divergences in health initiatives. I'm going to therapy and I'm working on myself. You're not. You're still being your regular old self. You're not growing up emotionally and maturing emotionally and seeking out a better version of yourself. That's a problem. That's going to cause a problem. And I'm trying to get healthy or whatever. I'm trying to lose this weight, and you're coming home with pizza every night. And while I'm trying to, get my Whole Foods and do this measure and weigh and do whatever, eat real food all the time, I'm going to the gym, you're going to happy hour.
Right. And one thing I think is just an easier example to really see this in is when I've counseled people on quitting smoking, but their significant other or somebody around them still smokes. Hey, I want to quit smoking. The other person's chain smoking right in front of them.
Yeah.
That makes it really hard for the other person to quit smoking.
I'm sober curious. I want to quit drinking. This person's opening a bottle of wine every night. You see how how this gets... This could.
Those are very obvious examples.
No, but I deal a lot with the one where it's like, oh, the wife wants to get healthier. She wants to eat a certain way. Husband could care less. So he's like mad that she's trying to make a healthy home cooked meal and he's coming home with some freaking, I don't know, Chick-fil-A or something crazy like that. So it starts causing a problem. Like, hey, I'm cooking this and you're eating, and this person might be struggling with that food noise or whatever. And you're eating this Chick-fil-A or coming home smelling like French fries, and I'm over here struggle busting.
Or just the sheer convenience in your face of like, okay, I have to prep food at home, so I have to take time to prepare it, cook it, clean up after, and here you walk in with, fast food that when I'm done, I can just throw it away, And so it's multiple levels of sabotage within the relationship, either intentionally or unintentionally.
I've seen people like critique or level criticism on their significant other because they're going to the gym a couple times a week. Oh, why are you going over there instead of like hanging out with me type of thing? And it's like, listen, I'm sure there's somewhere in there where some people might lose a semblance of balance and maybe they're at the gym too long or maybe they're at the gym too much and you're neglecting your relationship. I'm sure that happens.
Right.
But 9 out of 10, when I hear this, it's a regular person just going to the gym for an hour after work and the other person feels a certain kind of way because they ain't going to the gym. So that's a problem, and that starts creating stress in the relationship. And I'm gonna call you out because if your wife is in the gym, getting strong, getting all freaking, getting her muscle on and getting all healthy and whatnot and becoming more capable, and you're at home sitting on your butt while your wife is lifting weights, what are we even talking about?
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel good with yourself as a man when your significant other is out there building a better version of themselves and you are not?
Yeah.
Like that beyond comprehension for me as a man that my wife can deadlift more than me or something crazy like that, or she can carry more groceries than me. That blows my mind. Guys that are living in that scenario, I don't get it, but I am calling you to fix it immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Wouldn't that be weird?
Yeah, and I don't want to go off on a tangent of it, but I do kind of find it frustrating with men who rely solely on their financial achievements or their intellect and then completely neglect their physical health. Because I should have written down these quotes. I know I should have.
Oh, the Greek quote?
Yeah, the Greek quote.
Will have its
Greek quote.
Wars fought by fools and its thinking done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry, we're not ready with it, but there's a quote there that basically says that, the nation should foster warriors and intellectuals.
Right.
And you should be able to do both, because if you only focus on one, then your thinking is going to be done by people who weren't meant to do thinking, and your fighting is going to be done by people who weren't meant to do the fighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and we can go into that about how leaders don't prioritize their health, but yet we put them on a pedestal because they can,
they're eloquent.
They can spin their speech in a way that attracts us. They can, they have these accolades that don't really match up with if shit were to go down in the country, would they be able to stand in the front and help defend us?
I mean, that's the way it used to be. If you were going to be in charge, you had to be able to fight too.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to.
Got way off topic.
No, way off topic. But just to kind of, it goes, the overarching theme of this health pursuit is that you're a three-legged stool. There's emotional development that you need to seek. If you want to be healthy, you're emotional, you're intellectual, and you're physical. And you put all three of those together. I kind of include the spiritual stuff in the emotional realm. That's important. That's part of it.
Yep.
If you actually want to thrive long term and be the healthiest version of yourself that you can be, this stuff is very important. I think transitioning here a little bit, but along those lines of like couples who diverge, I think we're going to kind of talk about how we came together and what brought us, what made us a couple. But just to start it off, I think when people, like clients of mine, they meet Janie, or they'll make comments, they'll be like, oh, your wife must be in excellent shape because she's married to a strength coach. And I got to give her credit. I found her like that.
Yeah.
I found her like that. So where did we meet, Janie?
At a gym.
In a gym. In a gym, which reminds me of that Superbad. I'm throwing it back here, guys. That's Superbad. The movie where McLovin is telling him that he wants to go to bars to meet girls. And he's like, oh, you don't want to meet girls at bars. You want to meet them at pumpkin patches, at farmers markets, that sort of thing. I'm like, listen, I want to meet a girl in a gym. I'm just throwing that out there. If she's over there lifting weights already, you ain't got to convince her to lift weights. Boom, that's a good start.
Yeah.
So we met at a gym.
Right.
And it goes to show, like, you were into the health thing. You were pursuing health
Right.
and wellness in your own regard, and I was doing it in my own regard. And then we came together. That's a big common bonding thing that we bonded over. And then over the years, it's been more of like, hey, I'm learning this, you're learning this, and then we're learning together and kind of improving on our individual health by improving on our health together.
Right. Yeah. Because prior to meeting you, I know it's shocking, but did go on dates with other people.
No,
Okay.
Nope.
And I specifically remember going on a couple dates with this man who, I think he was a professor, very intellectually. This conversations were stimulating. He was intellectual. We had great conversations. I can't talk right now, apparently. And so, but the thing with him is he was an avid rock climber intermittently. And so what he would do is he would go on trips with his friends, which I thought was awesome, right? You like fly somewhere and go rock climbing. But he would wait until a trip was coming up to start going to the gym, get in shape. And then if there wasn't a trip coming up, he didn't do anything. So he let himself go in all senses of the word. But I just couldn't mesh with that because I was consistently going to the gym. It was part of my everyday routine. And to potentially be with somebody who was hot and cold with it, well, what would happen if it was Friday night and I wanted to go work out, but he didn't want to, and he was trying to pull me away from that? Now, maybe it would have been a good idea to spend some time with him. I don't need to be at the gym all the time, but I think you can speak to this more because this probably happens to men more than women, where you get into a relationship with somebody and they give you grief for jujitsu, they give you grief for spending
I've gotten that
every night at
in
jujitsu.
past relationships, where I was
Yeah.
like going to jujitsu and then it was giving me grief
Yeah.
for I've had that happen where it's like, why are you going to jujitsu all the time?
And I've received grief for, why do you go to the gym all the time?
Yeah, and it's like I was doing jujitsu before you, and I'm gonna do jujitsu after you. So
I think that's one of the reasons why you and I mesh so well, because when we first met, you were doing jujitsu 5 nights a week.
Mhm.
And I was like, cool, I'm working out 5. So I didn't pull you away from it. And even if I wasn't at the gym, I appreciated the importance of what that was doing for him, that I would never challenge him on spending time doing that. Because I know if I pulled him away from doing something that he enjoyed, then I might get the instant gratification of him spending time with me. But then what would that do later on in our relationship?
From that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Because then there's like resentment. You just made a deposit in the resentment bucket that could come to bear later.
Yeah. And also either going to the gym or jujitsu or whatever does great things for people's mental health. It's a stress outlet, right? So
skill-based hobbies that we've talked about before.
So now I potentially have taken away his stress outlet and made him hang out with me. And now he may just, have, resentment, but maybe he doesn't sleep as well that night because he didn't get his outlet, or maybe he's like more irritable the next day. And, and so it snowballs. So I think going to finding a partner who's like-minded, either they're also going to the gym with you, for staying on that example, or they understand it because they practice that themselves in some way, that they understand like that's something you need to do, and that's only going to make our relationship better. So I'm not going to take away from that.
Like our previous episode when we kind of talked about skill-based hobbies, we're talking about jujitsu and getting sweaty at jujitsu and stuff, but you can pull that out and talk about, I don't know, hunting, working carpentry jobs, like working on some renovation project on your spare time that this person needs to do, that it helps balance them and get their mentals and their chickens right, and if you detract from that, you're potentially kind of poo-pooing on their long-term health a little bit, if you will, in the grand scheme of things. I had that thing with the mountain climber guy. That's hilarious. Because I just think, I know Janie's really strong, y'all.
Well, and also
she's really strong. Like really strong.
But when I met him, he was in an off phase, and it was around Thanksgiving, and I was doing a turkey trot. I'm like, you can do a turkey trot with me.
Well,
smoked him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like I know you're really strong and whatnot. So, I mean, you're stronger than a lot of men that I've met in my life. So to have I just put myself in your shoes and you're like, ugh, just weak, bro. What is this? Just like, brother, what's that? That's where I just kind of see it. I had a situation when I knew, here's when I knew that I was like, if health is very important to me, or fitness at the time, health there's fitness falls within health, and then health is a more holistic overarching concept than what we talk about here is health. But at the time, it was fitness to me. I was young. I was in my 20s. I'm still young. Am I? No? Okay. Never mind. But at the time, I was in the military, and I got invited to go on a hike on Mount Rainier. This is in Washington State. If you guys have ever been there, probably an hour and some change outside of Seattle. It's beautiful because Mount Rainier dominates the landscape in Washington State. You can stand anywhere and you see freaking Mount Rainier. I'm like, yeah, I want to go up there to that snow-capped mountain, even though it's summer down here. Let's go. So it's obviously uphill. Like it's a fairly the hike we did is not the most challenging one. It's the most traveled one, but it's still a good little hike uphill the entire time. And the person that I was with at the time couldn't make it. They weren't like it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
It was bad. And I basically, this is not, I don't recommend this because I kicked into military mode and just be like, come on, we're going up this, like we're doing this, and drag this person up the mountain. And we made it up there. And that's not healthy what I did there. But when I hit the top and you stand there and you see this freaking mountain range, and it was summertime in Washington, but there's snow on the ground up there. And I'm like in shorts and no shirt, but I'm standing on snow. I'm like, I'm having this moment of like, it's exhilaration and like existential moment where I'm like, man, God made all this. This is crazy up here. And then it hit me. I was like, I almost didn't get to see this.
Yeah.
It's selfishly, I'm being selfish, but it's like, I almost didn't get to see this.
Or
because the person I was with wasn't fit enough to get up here.
Or how many people aren't going to be able to see that because of their physical limitations, because of their daily choices.
Yes. And miss out on that moment of like that. Man. And I think about this when I train people a lot, that I go back to that moment and how that made me feel. And I'm like, man, I want you to be able to have that moment yourself. Like if you get invited on some adventure, I don't know, hike the Grand Canyon in one day, top to bottom, like we did last year. And we're like,
R.I.P. pinky toenails.
Yeah, but it was like, oh yeah, 30 miles. Oh yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's go. Let's get the ticket. Let's go. Let's do it. Why? Because we're in a fairly good enough shape to be able to run that at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
So, but it's a moment. We're in the Grand Canyon. We're inside. We're like, yo, this is crazy. And we walk 30 miles in one day. Yeah. Like it's a test, and you feel really good after you do it. Because challenging stuff results in you feeling really good about yourself. But anyway, newsflash. But I when I train people and I'm like, oh, let's get them stronger. Let's get them moving better. Let's get them more capable. And when I talk about being stronger, healthier, capable, that is what I have in mind, where I'm like, man, I want people to be able to be ready to go on the adventure that's going to give them that moment where they can stand on a mountaintop and be like, yo, look at this. Look at these mountain ranges. Look at the sky. Look at there's snow on the ground, but it's hot. Like, and have that where you just, it's that existentialist moment where you're like, man, this is glorious.
Or even more day-to-day things, to be able to travel, to have the ability to walk through a whole airport, maybe at a quicker speed because you're trying to catch a flight, put your luggage in the overhead compartment, play with kids or grandkids. So a lot of people that I've worked with as patients who are older, they can't get up and down off the floor. And so how do you play with a toddler who's on the floor? Or I've had friends who, they've been hesitant to let a set of grandparents watch their kids because they don't know if they're able to carry the child up the stairs to go to their bedroom, And so I think a lot of people don't understand that lack of capability physically can then keep you from having social connections like with your grandkids or your kids, because you're not physically able to fill the role of
Yep.
caretaking.
And or more than that, I hear this one, and kind of makes me sad when I hear it, from older people that I work with, where it's like, oh, I'm going on this trip. It's like, oh, I've never been there. I don't think I'll make it there because I can't really travel anymore because
Right.
they're not confident in their physical ability. Like, I was talking to somebody about going to Portugal, and I'm like, hey, Portugal, the whole thing, guys, I'm going to share this with you right now. Portugal, the whole country, it's uphill. You're either going uphill or you're going downhill. You're never standing on flat ground in Portugal. Anywhere in Portugal, you're going uphill or you're going downhill
And
at some point in time.
some places in Lisbon have escalators now. Like remember?
Oh, yeah. In the streets.
In the streets.
Yeah, like a random alley in the street. It has an escalator in it.
And that's for tourists because the OG Portuguese
they don't use
people, 80 years old, just
Yep. They don't use
trekking
that.
up.
Yeah. So, but that's Portugal in a nutshell. It's uphill or downhill. You're never standing you're in a coffee shop and you're standing sideways.
Stop.
Hispanic hyperbole inserted.
Yes.
But it's, I'm telling them about, and like, oh, I don't think we can handle that. And I'm like, man, you see, like now you're like self-selecting from adventures that should really be accessible to a lot of people if you retain just a semblance of capability. You know what I mean?
And to tie it to social connectivity, I know that we both have older relatives who we've invited to our wedding who couldn't come because they didn't want to or cannot travel, which I'm not saying that's their decision. I'm not, I'm sad they weren't able to be there, but it's okay.
I like your
I just Amy Woodied it.
Amy Woodied
Yeah. That was not meant to be passive aggressive. But she's going to listen to that and be like, what? I'm going to get a phone call. Oh my goodness. But these family members of ours haven't been able to have certain social connections with people that they love, and they're isolated and they're lonely because they are not capable health-wise to get out and see people. They're purely reliant on people coming to them.
Yeah, that's then you get back into the loneliness and that sort of thing, and that's a problem.
See, it all ties together.
Yeah, it all ties together. That's why this physical, emotional, the social connection thing, it's all linked. You can't really address long-term health if you don't address physical, emotional, intellectual, all these areas, these intangibles like social connection.
And so you and I both individually had health and wellness as a priority. It's obviously evolved through
Where
the
did
years.
yours come from? What made you say, I'm going to do this? I'm going to go down this rabbit hole.
Well, just I think first physical health was my like doing sports has always been a huge stress outlet for me. And we may talk about this in future episodes. Very traumatic childhood. So sports were sort of it was my scapegoat. It was my sense of stability. It was my sense of family. And I, grew up in a small town, so I did every sport available. And then as I got into college, I, developed a friendship with a woman who was really into fitness, and it switched from the way I looked and a stress outlet to more like, oh, look what I can do. Look at how I can become strong and powerful. Same friend introduced me to CrossFit, and that kind of expanded on, it was much more about how I looked and much more than how I looked, and more about what I could do, how strong I could become, the achievements I could obtain.
Mm-hmm.
And then it evolved, right? And so then fast forward to when I started seeing patients, and I started seeing patterns of people who don't prioritize their health physically, mentally, intellectually, tend to be sadder, have more health issues, lonely. And I just started seeing these patterns. And I remember, I think probably the aha moment for me when really Achieve the Lifestyle was it was already when we were together, was my first Summer Strong that I went to. And Ryan Krauser, right? He's an Olympic thrower,
Set a world record.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge man. He's probably
Yeah.
like 6'7", 300 something pounds
Yeah.
of human.
And he gave a presentation about like what he does because he's unique in the fact that he doesn't have a coach.
He self-coaches.
Yeah, he
He's very
self-coaches.
unique.
Yeah. And he was talking about what he does and and I thought it was just going to be I train and all about that, but he brought into the conversation this is, I make sure to make nutrition a priority, my sleep's a priority, my recovery, my stress, my relationships. And it dawned on me and it's not a novel thought, but it dawned on me that an Olympic athlete prioritizes all these things that my patients need to prioritize at a much lesser degree. I understand that. But if they prioritized all this, they would be so much better off and so much more capable. But it's, like I said, it's not a novel thought because Greg Glassman said,
Yeah, so Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, and Janie and I, we're removed from CrossFit for a couple of years now, but we used to do CrossFit. We were
and we
very
give a lot of
involved.
credit to it.
Yeah.
For
It started, it was
yes.
foundational in our path,
Yeah.
if you will. But we, years involved in CrossFit. But Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, love him or hate him for better or for worse, but he had moments of genius. And he said one time, one of his great, most attributable quotes is that the needs of the Olympic athlete and the grandmother vary by degree, not by kind.
Yes.
So I think that is actually a pretty good quote there where, Ryan Krauser, a high-level world record-setting Olympic thrower, is telling you that he prioritizes sleep, nutrition, relationships, stress management, obviously his training so that he can perform at the highest of levels in a physical stage. And then we're telling you that if you want to live to 90 or 100 or whatever and have quality years, not just get there and you're all medicated and hopped up on daddy pharma products, but you're actually living and thriving and getting the most enjoyment out of your life that you can, then you need to prioritize your physical, your nutrition, your stress management, your sleep, and your relationships.
Yeah, because the only thing that is different is your highest level of achievement. His is an Olympic gold medal. Yours might be spending time with your grandkids or your family or having your friends say, hey, we're going to go on a hike at this national park. I have a permit. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And you can say yes, And I remember sitting there listening to him and I'm like, this is what all my patients need to do. But it's just at obviously a lesser degree because they're not getting paid to do it. And they have,
technically
stressors.
You could argue they're getting paid to do it.
Yeah, okay.
You're getting rewarded with quality life.
Okay. But sponsorships, I'm talking about like that. And I remember going to the some people I was working with and I'm like, this event is Summer Strong is amazing because, these high performing athletes do the same things that common people need to do. And if we all just took this at different degrees, all of our health would be better. And the response I got from a conventionally trained physician was, Janie, you're special. Not everyone needs to do that. But I'm not. I'm not special.
I'm gonna call BS on that. That's BS.
Yeah,
right there.
But I'm not. The fact that I make physical activity a priority, I make nutrition a priority, I make stress management a priority, I make sleep and recovery a priority is not special. That needs to be commonplace. But I think that we've been programmed or conditioned to not pay mind to those things because it's okay if you don't, because here's a pill to fix the effects of it if you don't.
There's also, you could get into the whole thing where people call you elitist or ableist. They're one of the ist and isms is going to get attached to your situation if you are pursuing this, you're putting some effort into this pursuit. People are like, oh, they're going to dismiss it because you're special and everybody can't do that. And obviously we're talking about, back to the sliding scale and degree and certain things, depending on what you have going on in your life, the amount of effort that you're able to put into it will vary.
Right.
And it'll vary for us at certain times in our lives. Like, hey, we're really busy. Some things are going to lose. I can't do as much jujitsu as I want or whatever. But the fact that it's still a priority doesn't change. And that's what we want to communicate to people. Like, do this to the degree that you can, but you have to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no, I'm just not going to do it, and I'm going to hope for the best. And then when I get sick, I'm going to be like, oh my God, why did I get sick? You know, but you have to put in time and effort. It's just, it's not a matter of should you do this or not. It's a matter of how do I do this?
Right. And so you and I both were, prior to us getting together, both prioritizing health and wellness. In a way, we've definitely gotten better since.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'd say we were big into fitness. And then as we progressed, we went into the hellscape. You know, we're in our 40s now. Welcome, Janie. Welcome to your 40s.
Thank you.
And now we see, you know, you start putting in the things that you hope will carry you to 80 in a different way, you know, because the things will change.
Yeah. But what I want to get back to is when we got together, so at our start, something very important was happening in both our lives individually. I was going to therapy consistently. I was having some, big, I guess, breakthroughs or revelate. I was working on a lot of things in therapy, and I was in a good place. You went to an emotional intelligence course.
That I got dragged to.
Yes.
I basically got bullied into going to.
And it was your friend.
I'm exaggerating. I'm being
Brennan?
dramatic. Yeah. It was a guy I was deployed with.
Yes. And I want to thank him 1,000 times.
Yeah. We were deployed together in Afghanistan, and, you know, we stayed in touch over the years, and he went to this thing and he said, you need to go. And he kept hounding me and hounding me and hounding me. And I was like, I don't want, I was just, I don't want to talk about this, touchy-feely stuff. Like most of my life, my emotions were either I was happy or I was angry. There was nothing in between, and it got me really, anger powered me through a lot of stuff. So I would always be like, okay, the only way to get through this is to get angry. So I would rely on that. But then eventually that starts burning you out. And the example I use,
burning relationships too.
And the example I use is like in jujitsu. If I'm in a bind, you can hit the power up button, which would be anger, getting angry. And at first, my early years, it worked. But then I started noticing that I would get really tired. I would have a big energy dump if I went to like and powered up into an angry spot. And then I'd have an energy dump, and you extrapolate that to life, So what I started finding is that I actually needed to zen out to get more energy as I got older. And now it's even more important to the point where I've changed the music that I listen to hype myself up. It's more zen stuff, and that gives me energy. But yes, I got dragged to that emotional intelligence course, and I attribute it with putting me in the position to be able to be in this relationship, and for this relationship to click. Yes.
Yeah. And so I think that was a pivotal thing, because I remember talking to you and you telling me about this emotional intelligence course, and I was like, that is the most attractive thing I've ever heard.
Oh my God, you're working on his emotions?
Yes. And so I think that was very instrumental in us working, because the beginning of our relationship, we do not recommend doing what we did to other people, because within 3 months of us being together, he moved halfway across the country with me, because I went back up to upstate New York for a job. And so we
met in Texas.
Yeah. So we dove in, right? But it was because the emotional intelligence on both our parts through individual work that we have done just fell perfectly into place. And I think made our intimate connection so much more powerful and secure, to the point where very early on we had conversations that typically aren't recommended to talk about early on. And I think one of the most important things we talked about was how we want to argue.
Yeah.
And how whenever I don't like to say the word fight, because I think that that's much more abrasive, but when we have a disagreement or we have an argument, here are the ground rules of how we can argue. And I don't think enough people talk about that, because then you end up getting into an argument with somebody. And this is, even though we've set this groundwork, this still happens, thankfully not often, but we end up going back and forth, and then we do something that we had already previously discussed that, if we have an argument, I don't like to be, I don't know what we said, but for example, I don't like to be called stupid. Okay. And if Dan, and he hasn't done this, but if Dan would be like, you're stupid. Now I'm just pissed off that he called me stupid. I don't even know what we were originally discussing. I'm just pissed off about something else. And then the argument just blew up. And so I think that was crucial that we talked about that early on and we still adhere to that.
Yeah. And listen, we're like, everybody's got to adopt their own strategies.
Right.
I think what we're trying to, because we're not saying we're perfect and
No.
we're this model relationship, but it's more of a figuring out, like taking the time and investing the energy into figuring out how to build relationships that work in the good times and the bad times.
Exactly.
Because that's the whole thing. You want this thing to endure the test of time. So there are going to be good times and there are going to be bad times. So you got to put the time into figuring out, hey, I'm going to connect with this person, but I want this connection to be strong. So how do we handle the good? How do we handle the bad?
Right.
And that's something that we spent
right. And we did it early on, which I don't think is common because most people early on, it's like, oh, everything's amazing.
Yeah.
Like we're having sex all the time. No, they can't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Even if they do something wrong, like it's okay.
You know what? I heard somebody call it meeting my representative. So I heard somebody describe it as like, oh, this is my representative that I introduced to you for the first 6 months. And then after the first 6 months, the representative is gone.
Yeah.
The real you is there. And now you're like, oh, whoa, what happened to the person that was doing this and that and this and that? And now it's like, oh, that was my representative.
Yeah. But the fact that early on we had a conversation about stuff might get bad or we might go through a bad period. How are we going to handle that? But because you had done the emotional intelligence work, because I had done emotional intelligence work through therapy, that wasn't scary to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And does that make sense?
Yeah. No, because we were in a place where we could sit down and have a hard conversation.
Right.
And figure out how to, put the foundation of what we wanted to be a long-term relationship together. And then it turns into a situation where even if something bad is happening, there's implicit trust and all this other stuff. So you're even through negative stuff, there's positivity going on. And that helps you long-term to maintain that connection.
Yeah.
That's super important. And now you can apply that to friendships too, because listen, you're going to need relationships for long-term health. It's just, even if you're a loner, quote unquote, or you're an introvert, you have to connect with somebody. Everybody's going to be looking for a significant other, and everybody wants to have 2 or 3 friends that they can rely on. Even if you say you don't, you need them.
Yeah.
Some people need 10, some people need 2, some people need 1, but you need somebody that you can rely on. And that will affect your long-term health for sure.
Yeah.
Which, to kind of wrap it up here, it brings us to the it's fine portion of this show. If you haven't caught on, it's fine is where we present the situation that's commonplace out there. And then we just say how, hey, we don't need to address it because it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. So something that is very common these days, and which I think it plays a huge part into why connecting with other people is so difficult. It's like there's a counterfeit version of connection. Mm-hmm. There's so many ways that people are quote unquote connected because we're the most connected society now. Like we said in the beginning of the show, that you could talk to somebody in China instantaneously and build a relationship with them and you're connected. But hey, are you really connected though?
Yeah.
So things that have contributed to basically making people feel like they're connecting with others, but they're really not. Social media is the first one.
Yeah.
You said it. You become friends on social, but then you can't talk in person when you finally see the person.
Or you see the people who are together, like at a restaurant at a table, or you're with a group of friends, and I'm guilty of this myself. You visit family, but yet you're all on your phone.
Yep.
Right.
People talking to each other over the shoulder type of thing, or head down, no eye contact, just more like, oh yeah, talking while they're texting away on their phone.
Or even some kids, that's how they hang out.
Yes.
Is they'll physically be together, but they'll only be communicating.
Yep, they're in like chat rooms or something.
Yeah, or on like a game where they can chat.
I've seen it where kids are, my friend lives 2 streets over, but we're on a chat room or whatever the hell. And
Right.
that's how we're hanging out, where I could just go walk outside and walk
Right.
down the street to the kid's house and we can hang out. They're like, no, we're digitally hanging out, or we're on some freaking game or whatever. It's like, man, like if my buddies lived down the street from me, it'd be like, yo, what are we doing, bro?
Yeah.
Like, it's a given. Like, let's go, grab the things, let's do the thing.
Yeah, I grew up in the country, right? It took me 20 minutes to get into town where the high school was, where all my friends were. And I remember one year we ended up living in town because our house got hit by a tornado, Kansas, surprise. But I was like, you mean I can ride my bike to a friend's house? I don't have to schedule my mom to drive me somewhere. But actually, it's Kansas, and I was 14 and driving. So anyway.
Yeah,
but
but you look at what's happening. Like these things, people relying on, oh, I know this person on social media, where you present this highly curated version of yourself and you think you know them.
Right.
Or you like each other's stuff on social media and you think you know them. People hanging out and going to dinner, but they're both on their phones and there's no real conversation going on, but you think you know this person. The kids hanging out with their buddy digitally versus in person. And it's building this thing like, oh yeah, that's my boy. But is he really? Is he really? Like the connection, it's saying you're connected, but it really isn't there.
Yeah.
You know? Something, video games, you know, that leads a lot because people can play live and play with each other. And then you think you know this person. Do you really? Because you're talking over, I don't know, Xbox Live or something. That kind of detracts from connection as well versus playing outside with your friends and, you know, doing crazy things together that starts cementing bonds. And here's one that could be controversial. The dating apps. Listen, let me disclaim here first. Dating apps have brought a lot of people together. There are a lot of awesome relationships out there of people that met on a dating app. That's perfectly fine. But I fully of the opinion, and I think the results of, you know, rising divorce rates and all this other stuff and people just breaking up left and right all the time show that it has devalued connection. Allow me to explain myself. If I get on Tinder or Bumble or whatever, and I'm swipey swipe left and right, boom, 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 and I'm just reading these little snippets,
or even just
person,
looking at pictures,
or even just looking at pictures, and I'm like, meh, oh, this person sounds interesting, you know, because they took the time to highly curate what they write in their bio, and now with ChatGPT, people are they're editing their pictures.
Yep.
And like they were doing it already, but now it's even easier to edit your pictures. And they're having ChatGPT write their bio, so it sounds all freaking clever and shit. And
I wish I had that.
Now it's even faker what you're looking at because it's AI generated.
Yeah.
So it's even faker. And I'm gonna go ahead, listen, give me my hat, grab your hat. I bet you that with all this AI stuff, if I get on a dating app now, there's going to be a huge percentage of profiles that are AI bots that they put in there to just make it seem like there's a lot of people in the app and there's a lot of options. Go ahead, change my mind. I'll bet a lot of money that if we pull the veil back on, I don't know, Bumble right now, there's a whole crap load of AI generated profiles just to make it seem like there's all these eligible bachelors and bachelorettes out there. But anyway, people are curating their stuff with AI. So now you're basing your selection on some AI generated BS. On top of that, it makes it seem like connecting with somebody is easier than it actually is. So, oh, we matched on Bumble. Now we start talking back and forth. And listen, I've been on dating apps too. And Janie has too. So we've all partaken in this. But we got to call it what it is. And now you connected with somebody and you started chatting. And then it's like, oh, you go on a date. Like, man, I don't like it. Like, I don't, it's not worth the effort. I'm just going to go back to my app, swipey swipe. I got a date next week. Yeah. So it devalued, you know, I mean, think before the dating apps, how hard it was to find somebody to go on a date with, you know, and how much effort you had to put in. And now it's, you sit on your butt, you know, scratching your itch and moving your thumb around, and you can have 2 or 3 dates.
Yeah.
Supposedly, allegedly.
And so I think there is some benefit to where if you live in a pretty, like you're like, well, I work 12-hour days. Like I'm a nurse and I work 12-hour days. I don't have time to like go out and, there's some arguments for and against that. And so, but you have to use the dating apps in a way to where, okay, one message or a couple messages to like meet a certain requirement. All right, now let's get coffee. I mean, that's what I used to do. Like couple messages. All right, let's meet during daylight in real life and have essentially like an in-person interview.
And some people navigate this very cleverly where they have certain questions that elicit a deeper conversation, and that way they know, and then they can move on, or they can like, hey, we're connecting over something of substance.
I do have a funny story from a dating app. I showed my authentic self, and I think I got denied a date because of it, because a guy asked me, I think my pictures must have been like head up or chest up. I don't know. I don't remember, so long ago. And a guy asked me for a full body pic.
Wow.
And I was training for a triathlon at the time. And I was trying on a wetsuit when I got that message. So I sent him a full body photo of me in my wetsuit, but like posing.
Yeah, I first
no response.
I gotta say, the balls on dude, the gall, the audacity to be like, yeah, send me a full body picture. What?
I mean, it was a full body pic. It was just in a wetsuit.
I was just like, what are we even talking about? Like, I get it, because some people are curating their profile in a way where they want to make themselves seem something they're not, and then you decide to go on a date, and you're not attracted to the person.
But somebody who I would have been attracted to would have thought that was funny.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. It's clever. It's very clever. But it just speaks to the whole thing of the situation where finding real connection for the long term is getting harder and harder. We're being distracted by these things. But you know what? It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's completely fine, because then you're talking about, a loneliness epidemic and rising levels of anxiety and depression and suicide, and people saying that they have a hard time making friends, and finding a significant other is getting harder and harder. But we have all this stuff to connect with people.
Right.
Why isn't it working?
Right.
You know what I mean? And it just goes back to human nature. Really, what brings us together is probably a lot simpler than we make it out to be.
And I think one thing I would like us to end on is, we've just said, like, you need social connections, you need meaningful relationships. But how? Right? Especially as adults, that's challenging. So one thing I would say is do something that you enjoy, like put time into yourself. So like if you go to jujitsu, or if you go to a gym, or if you join a running club, or you do you go play bingo, it doesn't have to be athletics, but then start to make social connections within stuff that you enjoy. Talk to people, like say hi. Or if you go to a coffee shop every day, say hi to the barista. If you see the same people, say hi. Like there's nothing wrong with just reaching out to people. One, acknowledging people around you maybe does great for that other person, because they're like, oh shit, like somebody said hi to me,
Yeah.
Because we're so in our zones throughout the day that we don't even acknowledge people we see repeatedly. For example, at the gym, I work out by myself. There's another guy who works out by himself. I introduce myself to him because I see him every week consistently. I'm like, hey, my name's Janie. He told me his name. And I was like, I just appreciate your energy. We don't work out together, but because you're around, I want to work harder because he's killing it, And was that a little awkward? Well, hey, I've already said I'm the queen of awkward things. I just embrace it. It's fine. But now when I see him, he's like, hey, right? And so it's like, it's leveled up, and there's a little bit of a social connection there. And yes, you could argue that's not deep, that's not meaningful, but that's the first step.
Yeah, it enables, and it's like a muscle. You're like training the muscle to like be open with other people and socialize a bit better, and get, you're putting yourself out there to where you can actually get to know others.
Right.
I think, as a takeaway, like you say, hey, how do we do this? That's a way. I also like the idea of like shared struggle, like doing challenging things together, bonds people a lot. It helps with bonds. I think back to like military units when you do really hard stuff together, all these people that are from different walks of life, there's a bond there after you endure a very challenging situation together. How do you replicate that in your everyday life? You know, we hiked the Grand Canyon with a group of people. We went 30 miles in a day.
Right.
That's a bond.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's a bond.
The rim job crew.
Exactly. That's exactly what we decided to call it. The rim, because we went rim to rim. It's the rim job crew. So yeah, there's that. There's, you know, people that like the events that we go to where you're, you know, something like a Summer Strong or like going to power athlete events or something like that, where I don't see my phone all day because I'm talking to people.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
Everybody's open, head up. Hey, so-and-so, boom, I'm looking you in the eye. Like, phone is not anywhere near it. If I have to get on my phone, I'm like away from it and do something real quick. And then I throw that mug away and I'm talking to people and you're like engaged, making an effort to like have conversations and look up and look at people in the face and listen and this sort of thing. These are lost arts, but they'll help you build better relationships. And then eventually you find your little tribe that you're super connected with.
And I think on this episode, we'll try to include in the show links some resources. Cause like I have a friend, Jess, who does women only trips. And I went on one with her and a group of amazing women to Alaska. And I've, you know, picked out some, you know, promising friendships from there. You've listened to a podcast where there's some guys who do retreats for men, you know, and young men or older men, you know? And so we'll try to include some of those in the bio because with this podcast, we do want to help empower you. So give you tips and not just recognize what's wrong and leave you all hanging, you know? So if you have any specific questions or you're like, hey, I really want to meet new people. How do I do it? This is where I live. I'm not saying that we can find something specifically for you, but we can try. So
or we can give you some tips on how to find people.
Yeah. So, you know, drop a comment either on Instagram when we post this podcast on at Achieve the Lifestyle. Send us an email at info@achievethelifestyle.com or DM us at Achieve the Lifestyle on Instagram.
Yeah. And with that, that's another episode. So guys, get out there, look, pursue, be curious, ask questions, and find like-minded people and look at them in the face and build a relationship.
And just embrace the awkwardness of it.
Yep. And we out.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Pharmaphobic Podcast. If you found this conversation interesting, which I know you did, make sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And also make sure to check us out on Instagram at Achieve the Lifestyle. And if you're interested in pursuing a stronger, healthier, more capable version of yourself, check out our website at achievethelifestyle.com.
The Pharmaphobic Podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not constitute medical, legal, or professional advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making any medical or wellness decisions. While we discuss pharmaceutical, holistic, and alternative health topics, our content is not a substitute for professional medical guidance.